So in this video, we are going to talk about casting and converting between data types. You'll often need to convert values of variables between different types. So for example, our data input is often entered as text in the console, so it's initially stored in a variable of the string type, but then it needs to be converted into maybe a date time or a number or some other data type that you're going to work with so it could be stored or processed. Sometimes you need to convert between number types, like between an integer and a floating point, before you perform calculations so that you don't end up with maybe rounding or precision errors. When we're converting, which is also known as casting, we have two different ways or varieties that we can do this: implicit and explicit. So the first way I'm going to show you is the implicit. An implicit casting happens automatically, and it's safe, which means that we won't lose any information changing from one type to another. So when we talk about data type safety, that is what we're talking about, is not losing any information through rounding or truncating. So in the first kind, where we're implicitly casting, we can see an example here where I'm casting an int variable into a double variable. And in this first section, we can see here that taking that integer and putting that into a double is safe. And the compiler has no trouble with doing that because no information can be lost, right? We're taking a whole number value and we're placing that into a variable of a data type that can hold decimal values, right? But in the second example, where we're taking a double and trying to put it into an integer, the compiler definitely has a problem with this. So you can put your mouse over the red squiggly to see the error message. You can also come down to the error list in Visual Studio and view what's going on in here. And it says, cannot implicitly convert type double to an int. An explicit conversion exists. Are you missing a cast? And so this is the compiler trying to help you see or understand that what you're asking to do here, that the conversion that you're asking for is not safe. So we cannot implicitly cast a double variable into an int variable because it will potentially cause a loss of data. Any of those numbers on the right of that decimal place would be lost since integers can only hold whole numbers. So let's look at another example. And so this is where that explicit casting comes in. Explicit casting must be performed manually because it may lose information, right? So that precision of the number. But by explicitly casting, you're telling the C# compiler that you understand and accept the risk. So to explicitly cast your double variable into an int variable, we have to write it like this. So we take our right in front of the variable and we, in parentheses, write out the data type that we're wanting to change to, right? This is called a cast operator. So when we place int in the parentheses in front of third number, you can see that it removed the error in the compiler. We've let the compiler know, I do understand that I might lose data in this transaction. I do want to change this double to an int. Anything after the decimal point would be trimmed off without warning because we've basically chosen to perform an explicit cast and therefore understand the consequences. But you, as a new programmer, need to understand, what is the compiler telling me with these kinds of messages, and why would this type of conversion not be safe? Why is the compiler basically stopping me from doing what I want to do? You can do a similar operation when converting values between maybe large integers to small integers, using things from like long to int. So you can look at some examples on maybe how to move from a 32-bit variable to a 64-bit variable. Again, those are all kind of the same concept. We're just changing our data type, and we might lose data Therefore, we need to choose, are we doing an implicit versus explicit type of cast? Now, we can use what's called the system.convert alternatively to cast our operator, and we can convert it from all of the C# number types, as well as things like booleans and strings and date and time values. And this is, again, just another way that we can explicitly make sure that the compiler understands we're taking that risk. We want to change from one data type to another. So if you see that system.convert in our examples in your textbook and things like that, that is, again, just another way of explicitly converting those numbers. So again, the point and the purpose is, one, to understand how can we move from one data type to another. If I take in a string from my console as input from the user, how can I then convert that into a number? And what is the difference between doing an operation like this, where we're literally just taking one type and putting it into another, versus explicitly telling the compiler that we want to change one type to another? And then, again, understanding the risks. So work on some practice, work on some of the examples that the text has on converting implicitly and explicitly, and using the system.convert type, so that you really understand what's going on here with our numerics, as well as some of the other C# types that we can convert with.